And I'm making this video because I just wanted to do an updated tutorial on how to use the music writer, like everything included in this tutorial, and also I fixed one small issue. Well, I say it's a small issue. Basically what was happening is it looks like my webcam turned itself back on. Hello. I forgot I enabled that option, but oh well. That's on, anyways. It is recording, I believe, but yeah. Anyways, moving on. Basically, what was going on is the function that I was using to convert the input in your script into a number was messing it up when you were setting the pitch for your notes, and so you couldn't actually change the pitch of your notes. It would just always be 1 no matter what you put in. But now I have fixed that, so you can actually change the pitch for your notes. It's just one single issue, but it's a pretty big issue, if you ask me. But anyways, let's continue. Now, you can use either normal computers or advanced computers. The difference only really comes in when you're in survival, where the normal computers are a lot cheaper to make. But it'll work just fine no matter which one you use. But I'm going to be using the advanced computers to show, and then I'll demonstrate using it on a normal computer to prove that it does work. But anyways, first you want to place down your computer, and then you want to put down an iron note block on any side of the computer, doesn't matter, and you want to put a lever on the top of your computer. You can use that to kill your music scripts in case they ever end up in an infinite loop. But anyways, now to actually install it, you want to do pastebin run, and then here's the code: capital R G lowercase g, capital L lowercase b, and then 1 lowercase k, 5 lowercase x, and you hit enter. And now in all the other ones that I've done, it's included a way to automatically reboot the computer for you, but I forgot that in this version. But now you can just either run reboot, or you can hold Control plus R for 2 to 3 seconds, I believe it is, and it'll reboot the computer. And you could have also typed in startup instead of reboot, or the Control R, and that would have just run the startup file, and that would have worked just fine. But anyways, now you're on this screen, and you've got 3 controls. You've got the edit song, you can use that to edit your music. You've got play song, you can use that to play your music, and then you've got reload note blocks. And now, what that does is when the computer boots up, it will look around for any and every single iron note block that's attached to it. It'll add all those note blocks to a list that contains, hey, there's a note block, here's where you send the signal to activate it. However, it only constructs that list once, so if you're to add a note block or remove all the note blocks, it has no idea that you made a change. However, if you then hit reload note blocks, it will then remake that list. So now it knows that there's 2 note blocks, but now if I remove that, it still thinks there's 2 note blocks, but not anymore, because I just told it to remake that list, and now it knows once again that this is the only note block attached. Now, let's get on with it. In edit song, you now would type in the name of the file you want to edit, and if the file that you selected doesn't exist, it will just create a new one. And it's raining. I won't bother turning that off because you don't hear it. And as you can see there, you can also type in guide, and it has a nice little instruction manual for everything you'll ever need to know about how to use this. And as you see in the little menu down here, can press Control to access the menu, and its arrow keys to move around here. The print option, well, this is the built-in computercraft file editor. That's why the print option is there. And basically that's for if you wanted to print out your scripts, you would have to have a printer attached, but Yeah. You can also here you can save your file so that if you were to make changes to it and you just left the file, it wouldn't save the changes. But if you hit save there, then the changes will be saved. And then here's the exit, and you hit enter to select those options, just like on this menu here. Now, I have included an example file that you can use. This is basically just an example that I made. And I'll actually use this to demonstrate the difference now that you can actually change the pitch of your notes. But anyways, now let's actually play our song. Now, we may remember that the guide song is an option. Let's try that. Yep, it doesn't work because it's not an actual song file. It's still a file, but when it reads through it, it's not proper code, so it doesn't work. So now, let's just do that randomly. Yeah, I can't find the file. If you just leave it blank, it goes back. But now, if you type in the name of a file that exists and is actually a music file, it will play the music. And I have it set up so that this song plays on a loop. And if a song is playing in a loop, you just turn on this lever. Well, it doesn't have to be a lever. It's just provide a redstone signal to the top of the computer, and it will kill off the song that's currently playing. And also here, if you leave that blank, it goes back. But anyways, that's about it on how to use it. Now let's actually look at how you program it to make a song. Now again, you can look at the guide and it'll show us how, and I'm actually looking at it because I actually kind of forget how. I just need to look through this real quick. Yep, you've got your 4 different instruments, 5 actually. Now these two here probably have actual names, but I didn't know what the names were, but they sound like the snare and bass, so I just did snare 2, bass 2. Just looking through this, just refreshing my memory on how it's used. Okay, now that I once again remember how it's used, I have remembered that there's actually another feature that we should look at first for connecting note blocks. And it's using these 2 blocks here, the networking cable and wired modem. You can connect a note block however far away you want. However, I do believe that there is a distance limit, but I can show you in a minute how you can overcome that well, I don't know. I don't know if that would work. Not going to bother testing it. Never mind. Well, if you want to try it, it is the repeat function, I believe. Yeah, just slap modems onto the computer, make sure it's all connected to this network cable, and type in repeat, and it'll just work. In fact, since it's so easy to do, I will try it. Just in case this does work. If this does work, then what this is doing is it's just relaying the signal so that it can keep going further. Because otherwise there is a distance limit. But anyways, once you connected up the wired modem and networking cable inside the wired modem, you right click on it and it connects that peripheral, because that's what this is. It's a peripheral. Just like your computer, just like your keyboard, your mouse, or your monitor. It's a peripheral for the computer to use to provide output, speakers as well. But anyways, right clicking on that will connect the peripheral to the network, and same one with this one. And we can just type repeat in here. Because if this does work, then you're going to need to do repeat in order to connect that one to it. And now if we do reload note blocks, and now I know that this note block will be included, but I'm not sure about that one yet. Let's test it. And as you can see, now you can play the song from any distance you want, but yeah, as I expected, this does not work. And there, yeah. Okay, that issue is a bit different than I previously thought. So yeah, about that, a little tip to keep in mind is when a song is currently playing and you have note blocks attached through the networking cable, do not break the networking cable. It will crash your game. I do not have any way of fixing that on my own, I believe. I'm pretty sure that it's up to the mod authors to fix that, and just resizing the window to fill the entire capture area. That should be good. Because as we should all know by now, I don't record my entire monitor screen. Anyways, now that that's over, let's get rid of that because that doesn't work. But as long as the networking cable goes directly from the main computer straight to the peripheral, or in this case, it should only be the iron note block, it will work. As long as there's nothing else in between the two, it will work. And you can use that to spread these around your base so that it's a constant volume level throughout the entire base. So now, let's actually get into writing a song. Right. We need to do an edit, not play. Now, it'll open up blank file if you type in the name of a file that doesn't exist. And don't mind my creaky chair because it's creaky and yeah. So, first we want to set the instrument. Well, the tempo and instrument will be by default set to, the tempo will by default be set to 0.1 seconds, and the instrument will by default be set to piano. You don't have to do that. So now, let's just test it with play note 5. Set the pitch to 5 and play it. Yep, there you go. And now, that's not what we wanted. If we change the pitch to like 15, it will have a different pitch. So now we can, that is the 0, not the arrow key. Now, probably one of the more advanced features in this version of it is the chunks. Now, if you're familiar with computer programming, this is basically the function as it's called in Lua. It's called, every language has a different name for it, but in Lua it's called a function. And basically, what this does is you can define an area of your code as a chunk, and then using a single line you can have the computer run all the code within that chunk wherever you want it to. And so basically this is useful for if you want to make a chorus to your song that plays multiple times but you only want to type it out once. You type it out inside the chunk at the very beginning of your file, then you can have the computer play through that chorus at any point in time using just one line of code instead of 15, which is really helpful. And now, as you see here, I hit the tab key to indent. Now, when in computercraft, when you hit tab key, it just adds 2 spaces to the very beginning of the line. However, it doesn't matter how many spaces you put in. You can put in as many as you want. When the computer runs through the code, it will just remove all that space before it even bothers looking at whether or not the line is valid or not. And so, therefore, you can have it indented as far as possible, or as far as you want, and it won't matter. This is just to help keep things organized. So now let's put more stuff into our function here, and even set the instrument to something else. I don't know, bass, then set the tempo to maybe like 0.5. It'll automatically put the point at the beginning there. And then play a few more notes. Set the tempo to back to 0.1. Now this is why the pitch wasn't able to change in the previous versions, is because it uses the same function to convert this information here into an actual number for the computer to understand, whether you're using set tempo or a play note. And so with set tempo, it was putting a point at the beginning so that you're not measuring in actual seconds. However, I might change that later on because you never know. However, it was also doing that with this, and so in previous versions this would get converted into a 0.7. And since the note range is limited to 1 to 24, it was just converting that 0.7 to a 1 because that is the closest end to where it currently is. So therefore it wouldn't work properly, but now it is working properly because there's an option to disable that in a function that I set. But anyways, doesn't matter. It just works now. That's all you need to be concerned about. And so now let's just put more notes in. Now we can set the instrument back to piano, and we can end the chunk. And again, the amount of spaces before the beginning of the line doesn't matter, as long as here you have the same identifier as in here. And now, to play through that chunk, you just do, it's run chunk. I was forgetting it for a second. And then the chunk identifier. And now this chunk identifier here can be whatever you want it to be, as long as it's the exact same in each spot here. And you can have as many chunks as you want in your script, as long as each one has its own unique identifier. So now we save that and we can test it. Yep. There you go. And we can run chunk again. Yep. And now, another feature is the hold option. And this is basically just set tempo, where it'll wait, because what set tempo does is the tempo is how many seconds it'll wait after it plays a note. And what hold does is basically it does the exact same thing, except it doesn't have to be directly after a note. It can be whenever you want, and it won't change the tempo. It'll just wait for the provided amount of seconds, and then it'll just continue on at the same tempo as before. And again, it'll convert the number it'll add a decimal point to the beginning of the number so that you're not waiting entire seconds. But again, I probably will change that. However, it will be complex to change it. Anyways, let's just put in 0.5, so it'll wait half a second, and then it'll run chunk again. As you could probably tell there, before it played the chunk for the last time, it waited a tiny bit longer because it was told to wait half a second. Anyways, now another feature is go to line, I believe it is. And you can use this to have the computer go to a line. And now what this will probably be used for mostly is to skip entire like chunks of your code. Like if I wanted to just ignore all this, I could just put a go-to line after the end chunk line here and tell it to go to line 17, where I would probably begin the song where I want it to begin, and just leave all this out. But what I'm going to be using it for here is to put it into an infinite loop. So now, since the song begins on line 13, because lines 1 through 12 is the chunk there, since where the song actually begins is line 13, we tell the go-to line chunk function to go to line 13, and it'll run on an infinite loop. However, this is where the lever comes in handy, because just provide a redstone signal to the top of the computer and it'll stop. And one last feature is commenting. Just put 2 lines, and now this is, since we're using the default computercraft file editor, it'll turn it green, which is what it does in normal code, because this is the actual way you comment a line of code in actual programming. But now the computer will completely ignore this line. It'll be as if that line does not exist. And so, if we run test, and since it is told to ignore that last line, it does not do the infinite loop, since the last line is the go-to line function. And you can do this at any point in time, as long as it's not this, as long as it's not one of those, because the computer will not know that there's an issue there, but that is an issue, and it'll not work properly. And so yeah, you can do this at any point in time you want. So I can comment out that chunk there, that run chunk. However, one thing, oh dear, one thing that does make this different from actual computer programming is you can't put a comment on the same line as something else, because yeah, hungry. Anyways, in normal computer programming, there would be no issue with this. That's why the computercraft file editor turns it green. However, with the way this works, that will cause an issue. Yeah. Error on line 15. Go down to line 15. Yeah, there you go. This is an issue. But as long as you don't do that at all, it should work just fine. Anyways, as you can see, now it works fine. And that's how you make your songs. And now, to demonstrate that it does work on normal computers, so we just do pastebin run, then the code, which is exactly the same as before. I'm having to look at my little notepad to remember it. And then we'll download it again. You have to reboot the computer manually, and it'll work just fine. And now, to show you the difference from when the notes weren't able to change their pitch, I'll use this setup here, which is what I used in the previous video. Yeah, that's a lot different, isn't it? But yeah, that issue there is now fixed, so you can change the pitch of your notes. complete updated tutorial on how to use the jogOS music writer. I'm not going to bother changing the version number. Main reason is I didn't change it in the startup file before I put it all on pastebin, so I'd have to redo everything with an entire new download code in order to change the version number, and it was only just one thing that I changed that really should have been fixed on version 1. Anyways, yeah, it all works now. And there are a few more features that I want to add to it, and basically what they are is just numbers and stuff like that, and variables and basic logic, so that you can have, so that if you want to run a chunk 17 times but not have to type out run chunk 17 times, you could probably have like a loop that will cancel itself after 17 runs, so it'll loop 17 times and move on. That's where that would probably be useful, but mainly I'm doing it just to say, hey, I can make it this complex if you want me to. But yeah, and so that'll probably be the only thing that I add to it before I consider this completely done and finished. And so if you do not see any reason why you would want to use that, then this is probably going to be the last version you're going to need. This is pretty much done for you. However, if you do want that option available to you to use variables like that, then just stay tuned for another update video, which will probably come out in maybe another month. I don't know, when I finally get around to actually working on it and fixing it so it actually works. Then I'll probably give it a week like I did with this one, because this issue with the tempo I actually noticed like almost immediately after I did the last update, but obviously I waited till now to update the video and release the fixed version. So yeah, maybe like give it a month or so, and I will probably have the whole variable thing added if you want to use that. But anyways, that'll do for this one. See you guys in the next one.